So, Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik, the series' main villain. From the very first game, he's been Sonic's main source for an adventure. You literally can't have a Sonic game without Eggman. That doesn't count! Anyway, what can you say about Eggman? A lot of things, actually. He's loud, he's boisterous, he has an ego as large as his belly. Everything about him, from his design, character, and narrative around said character, is just a perfect foil to the main character. While Sonic represents freedom, Eggman represents oppression. While Sonic represents the beauty of nature, Eggman represents the dangers of technology. It's a beautiful dichotomy between the two that keeps these two at odds for 30 plus years, and crazy enough, in those 30 plus years, Eggman has been the most consistently written character in the series. And if you're very much well informed on the overdramatic characterization discourse that plagues the fandom every single day, to the point that it becomes really tiring real quick, and why people made fun of it over time, you'd know that's a very big statement to say. Even in the 2010s, there wasn't anything that seemed out of character for Eggman to do or not do. It was pretty consistent to the Doctor we all know. So why make this video in the first place? What is there to talk about Eggman? There really isn't a problem with him, right? Well, there is a topic that sparked up a discussion about the Doctor as a character and who he truly is. And it all has to do with a new addition to the series that changes up some dynamics for the Mad Genius. But why do some people dislike that addition so much, and think it's going to harm Eggman's character for the foreseeable future due to how he treats it? While I do have some issues with how Eggman has been portrayed at times, issues I will be discussing, I try not to let those flaws stop me from appreciating the character for who he truly is, including his human side. But first, if you don't mind me taking a bit of a detour, I could tell you the answer to all this minor discourse surrounding him. The first video in this series of videos I've been making was about the ever-growing discussion of the discourse surrounding our hero Sonic the Hedgehog. While it's not the juggernaut of Sonic videos going by the view count, I'm still proud of the reception I got. Whether people floored me with praise or said I was strawmanning, which coming from some people was the pot calling the kettle black, but that's neither here nor there. My point is that I made that video to address all the criticisms modern Sonic has been getting for a while. Take this section as more of a follow-up to it. During my time on Sonic Twitter, there's been something I've picked up on when seeing and getting into multiple arguments about Sonic's character by a lot of Japanese fans who see Sonic differently than other people do. This isn't me saying that Japanese Sonic isn't Sonic, far from it. He is Sonic the Hedgehog that Yuji Naka and Naoto Oshima created all those years ago. However, the thing I went against so vigorously in that video and nowadays is how some fans perceive the character to truly be. These things that fans say the character isn't meant to be or do to me felt unfounded. What I'm trying to get at is that Sonic fans tend to overcorrect on what the character is supposed to be, and it becomes a genuine issue. Like again, saying Sonic isn't cocky, even though his actions point to him being a cocky character. He brags about being the fastest and being second to none when it comes to speed. He plays around with his enemies like a cocky character would. The events of Unleashed only happened because he got cocky enough for Eggman to get the drop on him. Sonic is cocky, but just in a very healthy way compared to most cocky characters. And then there's people who think he has some level of animosity towards the authority, when in reality, he is more or less indifferent to them. They use SA2 as a reason for it, since he's going up against them for a sizable portion of the game's story. Except the reason for it was because he was framed for something he didn't do. Moreover, the fact that he's friends with princesses and has taken a photo near the White House for the president to have. And then there's the aspect of Sonic being treated as a superhero, because some of his actions being considered something that superheroes normally have. Like him working with Restoration makes him a superhero, even though he makes it clear he doesn't work for them and only helps them as a favor, and more importantly because they're his friends. Him having morals and principles somehow makes him a superhero, even though he's always had morals and principles. Characters, whether they are good or evil, have morals and principles they abide to. One of the best Sonic stories is all about his morals and principles being challenged and him sticking to them no matter what. I know people say that he's Mr. I do things my own way, but that in and of itself is a principle altogether. And then my favorite of this whole notion is that his quipping makes him a superhero, or say, Spider-Man. And yeah, I get it. We live in a world where dialogue is a lot more joke-heavy due to the influence from the MCU, but saying he's like Spider-Man because he quips is a bit disrespectful to not only him, but Spider-Man as well. And yes, Sonic nowadays quips just a bit too much, but to say he's never been that much of a quippy character is a little bit of a lie there. A quip isn't a lame pun, which Sonic has made before. The literal definition of it is a person giving short and witty remarks, and if you don't think that Sonic the Hedgehog, has never given out witty remarks before, then that's just lying at this point.
機内上映も機内食もないんじゃねえ。それに俺は走る方が好きなのさ。こいつは随分と派手な余興だね。おいおい待てよ。しつこい男は嫌われるぜ。
Now, the point of that detour was to show that some fans overcorrect on Sonic as a character, and now that overcorrectness has made its way to Dr. Eggman due to the introduction of a new character in the series. They believe that Eggman caring about this character is out of character for him because in their eyes, Eggman is not supposed to care. He's too much of a narcissist to do that. He only cares about himself. He's supposed to represent the worst in humanity, therefore humanizing him in any shape or form is going against that. And all I have to say is, what Eggman are we talking about? Eggman has always had this side to him, since the very beginning of his creation. Sure, we mostly see the side of an egocentric madman, bent on controlling the world through his technology. But deep down, there's been this side to the Doctor that shows up from time to time that makes us question and delve into the type of man he actually is. And Eggman isn't that much of a bad guy. Sure, he carpet bombed an island, blew up an island, almost nuked the city, destroyed half the moon, split the earth into pieces, enslaved both animals and aliens to be his robots, started a zombie apocalypse, and took over the entire world. But he's not that bad of a guy. Like he said, he's a complicated guy. Sarcasm aside, Eggman has always been a humanized person, and when I say this, I don't mean some people's interpretation of that word. To humanize a character just means giving them depth or a deeper meaning to their character that isn't just a simplistic one. For example, I've recently read the Archie Mega Man series, and in a scene where the series villain Dr. Wily and Mega Man team up to take down an even more dangerous threat in Raw Moon, Mega Man is about to make the ultimate sacrifice so he can defeat Raw Moon, and he tells Wily, a person that he's already fought twice prior to this, to please take him back to Dr. Light so he can repair him. Wily could have just left Mega Man to die and make his escape, but he kept his promise to Mega Man and took him back to Light and even helped him get repaired. Sure, he did, in a way, try to use this as a way to clear his name of his past transgressions, but later on, he did start to contemplate turning a new leaf, especially when Dr. Light wanted nothing more than to have his friend back with him. But, as always, like another doctor that we're talking about, his ego got the best of him and he went back to the status quo. But you understand what I mean, right? Villains can be villains, but still have a side to them that humanizes them as characters. Bowser may want to take over the Mushroom Kingdom, but he's also a good dad to his son Bowser Jr. Magneto may want to wipe out all Homo sapiens, but he's also a man that cares deeply about his own kind. He wanted them to not be hated and hunted down like animals like he was. Solidus Snake may have killed Raiden's parents and subjugated him into becoming a child soldier, which mentally screwed him up to the point of almost no return, but he was also a man that wanted the freedom to make his own choices and give that same freedom to the people, something the Patriots didn't want. He wanted to leave a legacy behind and not be forgotten to time, which sadly he did. Eggman is no different from these villains when it comes to humanizing his character. Now, people will use some Yuji Naka quote about Eggman being the worst of humanity, but for the life of me, I can't find the interview where he said that no matter how hard I try. So I'm going to do the next best thing and use a quote from the series' other creator, Naoto Oshima. As he says about Eggman,
Eggman is a human representative. He is not evil in Sonic Adventure. Enemies that destroy the world appear. Eggman protects the world. Humans are enemies for animals. Eggman wants to make the world beautiful with science and technology. This story is a battle between science and nature. Everything is my personal opinion. Thank you.
Now, I don't know what version of the essay one was he talking about, but the point still stands. Eggman's representation of humanity is one of someone who wants to change it through the ambition of his technology. While Sonic doesn't see himself as a hero, Eggman in turn doesn't see himself as a villain. Also, if I may ask, if Eggman is supposed to be the worst of humanity, what does that make Eggman Nega, who is supposed to be a more evil version of Eggman? Shouldn't he be more of a representation of that instead of our Eggman? So, what I'm going to do here is list off some examples of humanized moments from Dr. Eggman throughout this series. Not counting stuff like Archie, not just because I haven't fully finished all of Archie, but also that from what I can tell, Archie Eggman was a fucking menace, man. No, I'm going to be using the games and other materials connected to the games to prove my point about this other side of Eggman. Now let's start with the most famous Eggman humanizing moment from the most famous Sonic game, Sonic Adventure 2. Now this is where Eggman is at his most sinister. He breaks into a military facility, releasing its top secret weapon in Shadow. Not to mention he also famously threatens the entire world with the Eclipse Cannon and blows up half the moon as a demonstration. He even manages to not only one-up Sonic, but almost succeed in killing him. There's a reason many put this Eggman as the peak of his character, myself included. He's on top for most of the game. He is there to make a name for himself with no mistakes getting in his way, besides the Black Hedgehog that's been manipulating him throughout the game. Yeah, that's kind of a running gag with Eggman. Dude is always getting betrayed. Anyway, it was only until the last half of the game where he had to team up with the heroes to stop his grandfather's insane plan on destroying the Earth. However, it comes at the cost of Shadow's life. I guess. While everyone is lamenting over the loss of Shadow, Eggman himself has a conversation with Tails, and what he says is rather interesting.
幼いわしにとってじいさんはまさにヒーローじゃった。子供心にいつかはじいさんのような科学者になることを夢見たもんじゃ。じゃが、じいさんは本気でわしらを滅ぼしたかったんじゃろうか。
This is the first time we've ever seen Eggman open up about himself and talk about his past in any way. Eggman loved Gerald in his own way. He was his idol. He became a scientist because of his work. Gerald, before he went crazy, was a man that wanted to make the world a better place with his technology, much like Eggman, even if one went about it in a very different way. So to see Eggman genuinely be distraught over his own family trying to not only destroy the planet that he once wanted to protect, but with his grandson on it. This shows that Eggman isn't just that one-note evil for the sake of being evil villain. He's a man with some baggage and a legacy he has to carry. He still is going to go back and try to take over the world, but still, this little piece of dialogue opens up a lot of depth to this character that we may not know about. And then we fast forward to Shadow the Hedgehog. I still don't like Shadow the Hedgehog, as a game or a story. I already said what I needed to say about that game in my Shadow video, so let's talk about Eggman's role in the game. In some parts of the multiple stories, he served as a character to manipulate Shadow into either thinking that he has no past, or he's just another Shadow android, which Shadow sometimes stupidly believes, even though unlike all the other androids, he has sentience. God, that story is so weird. Anyway, there's also another thing that happens throughout the multiple stories in the game for Eggman. He gets killed. No! Nothing witty to say, I just find it very funny. So the game has multiple non-canon scenarios to analyze the Dear Doctor on his character. But let's focus on the canon side of the game, the last story, where a lot of stuff gets revealed. Gerald's other true intentions, another piece of lore in Shadow's creation, and the whole deal of Black Doom's true motivations. All leading up to Shadow taking on his second daddy to save the world. Throughout the fight, you have characters rooting for Shadow to save them all, including Eggman himself. If you survive long enough, you get this piece of dialogue with Eggman, and it's rather interesting.
Shadow, 聞こえとるか? 最後かもしれんから言ってしまうがな。わしがお前を作ったというあれ、実は全部作り話じゃ。誰もがお前は死んだと思ったあの事件の時な、わしのメカにお前を救出に行かせたのじゃ。 後遺症で記憶こそ消えてしまったが、お前は正真正銘じいさんの生み出した究極生命体じゃ。
Eggman finally tells Shadow the truth. He is the real Shadow that Gerald created. He is the Shadow from SA2. But why though? Why finally tell him during the moment of the story? Maybe it's to motivate Shadow even more into stopping Black Doom, but also maybe Eggman actually does have some remorse over how he treated Shadow. This confession shows that he can acknowledge his mistakes. It was like in Dragon Ball, around the end of the Android arc, where a one-armed Gohan has to deal with a full power of Super Perfect Cell. Vegeta, who's been nothing more than a thorn in everyone's side, actually tells Gohan that he is sorry, which takes Gohan aback because Vegeta has never said something like that before. Getting back to Eggman, I think we can also see that the other reason Eggman told him this is maybe Eggman has some level of fondness for Shadow. Sure, he might find him as annoying as the other Hedgehog that constantly ruins his life, but I wouldn't say he hates Shadow like he does Sonic. I think that type of fondness comes from the fact that Shadow is the last and greatest creation of his grandfather, and a remnant of how amazing he was when he was alive. So him feeling this remorse for letting him on like that makes a lot more sense. But hey, that may be me making up my own headcanon. Could be just a spur of the moment. Doesn't change the fact that this is another example of that different side to Eggman. Let's take a detour from the games and talk about a different piece of Sonic media. Sonic X. Sonic X has an interesting take on Eggman. And by interesting, I mean it has probably my least favorite iteration of Eggman when it comes to the game side of things. My issue with this Eggman is that he's treated as the butt of the joke most of the time, rendering him in the more comedic role. And I'm not saying that Eggman isn't supposed to be a funny character. Like take the Egg Carrier for example. His floating masterpiece of a weapon also has a cute little pool inside. My point is that this Eggman is mostly on the comedic side of things. He's not a character to be really taken seriously in this show. I'm not asking for him to be Sad AM Robotnik, who is the definition of evil for the sake of being evil, but I want a balance to the silly and serious side of him, because whenever I see this Eggman, I don't see Dr. Eggman. I see Dr. Doofenshmirtz. That's not to mention scenes that I feel are so out of character that I feel that the writers have it out for the guy. Like making him way too soft for my liking. I genuinely don't believe that the same guy whose literal lyrics to his own song is would also be like this.
ソニックよ、もう参ったしてよ。これ以上はこっちだって。かかってこい。だからそういうこと言うなって。99、そんなに頑張らなくていいからね。少しは加減してあげなさい。
You can't debate me on that. This is not a Lupin and Zenny-Guy relationship. It's genuinely not Eggman. Not to mention scenes that make him stupider than he actually is, like how they botched his best scene in the SA2 adaptation. Where in SA2, he managed to outsmart all the heroes by faking he didn't know there was a fake emerald just to make Tails blurt it out, while X actually has him not realize that it was a fake emerald to begin with, like an idiot. This is a show that gets the characters right. Give me a break. But this still does have that side of Eggman in the show. Whether it was him and Sonic having a one-on-one talk about their time in the human world, and how you can tell that Sonic doesn't want to leave this place and is trying to hide it, or this small piece of dialogue where he's trying to reason and comfort Tails in his own way when he's having trouble trying to deliver the final attack on Dark Oak, which will result in killing Cosmo as well. This show doesn't stop there with humanized Eggman moments. Around the end of Season 2, where it's revealed that Sonic and his friends have to go back to their world, or, I don't know, they got frozen in time or whatever dumbass thing they said, and Chris Thorndike doesn't take this news in a healthy way, thinking this must be a trick of some sorts. He goes to Eggman thinking that he may have a hand in all of this, and at one point, Eggman plays along to Chris's delusions, until he stops and lays the truth on him that it's over. This long game between them is coming to an end, and Chris has to deal with it. What makes this scene so humanizing is that Eggman is doing what no one else had the nerve of doing with Chris. Set him straight. He's saying these things not because he wants to hurt Chris's feelings more. He's just disappointed in him acting this way in front of him. He's seen Chris come into his own when destroying his plans along with Sonic, So see him act like this selfish person who forgoes everyone's happiness for the sake of his own, that's something Eggman would be doing, and he's literally telling Chris not to sink to his level. Chris still couldn't believe that his time with Sonic was coming to an end, so he leaves and you get this rather somber moment from Eggman.
そっとしといてやりなさい。
Something like this does come back way late into Season 3, where Eggman tells Chris that he may not get a chance to go back to his world if they successfully win against Dark Oak, because that would destroy the Master Emerald. But Chris actually doesn't want to rob his friends of everything they worked hard for, so he's willing to make that sacrifice for them. He then asks Eggman to keep it a secret, and Eggman promises. Let's not even forget at the end of the series, Eggman does create a ship that lets Chris go back home. He does this for Chris's sake while still being the Eggman that we all know. These are not signs of redemption, but these are scenes where that different side of Eggman shows up, and he can show care for someone purely for the sake of it. Not done yet, since Season 3 has a plethora of humanizing Eggman moments. Like the episode where it looks like Eggman is searching for Sonic and the gang, so he can take them to the Metarex for a reward, but he actually helps them escape while making a total sacrifice that could have killed him. The thing I like about this moment was that only Sonic and even Vector knew that Eggman was faking it the entire time. This episode really does show Sonic and Eggman's relationship in a different light than their usual shtick. However, there's one moment that I think encapsulates the relationship perfectly, and it's the episode where Sonic becomes Dark Sonic. Now I know every 2000s kid knows about Dark Sonic, so I ain't gonna go into a long diatribe about it. All I will say is I do like the concept of it. People like to talk about how Sonic has some unbreakable spirit where nothing, and I do mean nothing, will break him or make him act differently than he usually does. He will always have a smile on his face when he's at the brink of death. However, those people I talk about don't really know what that term means sometimes whenever they use it for some scenes where Sonic does show some level of weakness. Like using examples from the Metal Virus arc, even though those scenes aren't about his spirit being broken, but more him realizing the mistakes of his actions, but still not giving up in the end, showing his unbreakable spirit. But that's an annoying ass story for another time. The best example of Sonic's unbreakable spirit comes in Unleashed, where Sonic talks about Chip being the one protecting him from Dark Gaia's energy from turning him into a monster. But Chip tells him that it's actually himself doing that because he's too pure to let himself give in to any negative emotion. I say all this because Dark Sonic goes against everything about Sonic's nature. Sure, you can say those corrupted emeralds are what made him act like this, but it's still a moment where Sonic got corrupted. Sonic lets his emotions get the best of him. This is just a different Sonic than what we're used to, and the person to snap him out of it is his most hated enemy, Eggman. Eggman calms Sonic down, saying that his friends are safe, and tells him something that you don't expect Eggman of all people to tell him.
ソニック、わしを悲しませるな。貴様が怒りや憎しみに飲み込まれてどうする？見なかったことにする。このまま煙の中に消えろ。な。
This scene just shows how deep this relationship is between the two. Eggman showing signs of care for Sonic that he tells him straight up that this isn't him and he shouldn't let his anger control him because that's not who he is as a person. What I do love is that this is a scene with just them, so this is a moment with only them knowing what truly happened, and Eggman is willing to forget that this moment ever happened for the sake of Sonic. It's just... wow! I made my complaints about this portrayal of Eggman before, but when he hits, he truly does hit. The only thing I would have an issue with this is what happens afterwards with that stupid moment of, we only capture people, we don't hurt them like you do. Uh-huh, sure Eggman. God, why can't this show be consistent for once? Hey, did I mention there was a moment where Eggman tries to be a parent to Bokun? That was cute. I'm sure that doesn't have anything to do with the video, but hey, it counts. God, imagine Eggman as a parent. And I'm done with X here. Let's make our way to the IDW series. What? IDW doesn't count? It's not canon! It gets the characters wrong. It's written by the worst type of people. Western writers. Too bad. Don't care. It's canon. Cry me a river. Now, IDW definitely has one of my favorite portrayals of Eggman. He's just enjoyably evil for all the right reasons. I can see the writers having so much fun writing how entertaining Eggman can be when you don't constantly make him the butt of a joke in every scene. You actually get this interesting perspective where with Sonic, he's treated like a joke because, you know, that's how Sonic treats him. But to others' perspective, he's the most dangerous man in the world. Nothing screams that idea than one of his most evil actions thus far, the Metal Virus, a virus that turns organic beings into zombified robots. The arc is genuinely fucked up, and some of my favorite moments in the series happen here. However, this isn't the video to talk about that, so let's get back to Eggman in this arc specifically. One thing I like about him in this is how he really believes that the Metal Virus is supposed to be helping people. Like, look at this dialogue in some scenes. He doesn't see that the actions he's done in this arc are evil. It's a very twisted way of humanizing him. To him, this is him cleansing and wanting to help the world. But as always, he does it in the worst way possible. But that's not all this comic does for Eggman. In fact, the main reason I use this comic as an example is for one very important thing that it does for Eggman's character. Kind of a domino effect that affects a lot that happens in this comic. Here's Mr. Tinker. Mr. Tinker is Eggman with amnesia. He's a jolly old man who spends his time helping the town by fixing their stuff, making toys, and anything else for them. Yeah, it's a strange turn for the evil doctor that even Sonic can't believe and doesn't believe at first, but later does. I like to think that Tinker is someone Eggman believes deep down he is. Just some helper trying to make things right for the world, making it beautiful in his eyes. But unlike the Doctor, he does it in the most healthiest of ways. But all good things must come to an end, in the form of an actual fanboy of Eggman, who brings back the good Doctor to kickstart the Metal Virus shenanigans, leaving Mr. Tinker as nothing more than a memory. Or so we thought. In issue 23, Sonic had to talk with Eggman over why Tinker wasn't good enough for him, because he knew deep down Eggman was happy during this time as him. Eggman, however, laughs at this idea. He may have been well aware of his time as Tinker, but he knows that wasn't him. He mocks the idea that he ever had some level of enjoyment during that time, but we get a panel where he actually thinks about it for a second. His clear expression showed that he did like his time as him, or at least saw some value in it. But it's Eggman, and his narcissism gets in the way of that line of thinking. I do like that IDW at the time tackles this question of, can Eggman be redeemed? And the answer we get is, no, but it doesn't hurt to try. Well, it actually does hurt to try, seeing the amount of destruction he causes, and the people he has hurt. Huh, maybe Sonic should just kill him. Let's take another detour to talk about Eggman's relationship with his robots, as it is something that definitely needs to be explored for someone. To describe his relationship with them in one word, it would be usefulness. To Eggman, his creations are expendable. He has no attachments to them whatsoever. If one gets destroyed, it doesn't really affect him. He'll just make another one or discard them entirely, like trash. There's a whole story about that, which you should give it a read. He really doesn't treat them right either. He treats Orbot and Cubot terribly, and at one point abandons them. He kicks out the E-Series robots when they get the wrong frog. Even with Omega, who is the greatest of the E-Series, whose power rivals the Ultimate Lifeform himself, was relegated to guard duty. His usefulness was squandered because Eggman couldn't be bothered to give him something significant to do. You're as good as dirt if you're not useful to Eggman. And it doesn't help theirs or his case that sometimes his creations end up betraying him in the end. Take his second greatest creation, Metal Sonic. Now the relationship between them is very interesting. Yeah, Eggman has treated him like garbage at times, abandoning him in CD and only using him again in Sonic 4 Episode 2 to do a job for him. However, Metal in turn has betrayed him on several occasions, like in Heroes where he's now the big bad. Eggman has to remove the rebelliousness out of Metal for the robot to cooperate for once, but even that has its limits. I think when creating a machine that rivals Sonic, and one that has similar mannerisms as Sonic in almost every way, he kinda went too far in doing that, since Metal has the same rebellious nature as his organic counterpart. On the other hand, due to Metal being at his service, he does show some fondness towards him, and Metal does want to improve on himself, for the sake of his creator. But all that is basically artificial because the two will butt heads and conflict will happen between them someday. It's not the ideal father and son relationship that people think is being shown nowadays. Metal is still a tool for Eggman's grand ambition. All of his robots are. In the end, no matter what, Eggman comes first. Or so we thought. I've been putting off this character long enough to the point of not even mentioning their name, but I think it's time to talk about the main reason this video is being made. It's time to talk about the daughter of Dr. Eggman, Sage.
I never really knew my cousin Maria. Everyone spoke of her like she was very special. All that love for someone who was gone when I was right there! But I have to wonder, back then, was she anything like Sage is now?
So, Sonic Frontiers decided to introduce a new character that changes the status quo of Eggman's character. An AI robot named Sage. She makes Eggman rather strange for some reason. She makes him feel some sort of way, making him feel things he has never ever felt for any of his robots, making him see things that he truly never saw within himself. But the question is, why? Why her? Why is she the exception to the rule? What makes her different from every other robot he's created and treated? Why would a man that tosses his robots aside so many times when they get destroyed to the point there's an entire island for them to live in now be so absolutely devastated to see that he lost her at the end of the game? What makes Sage so different? Well, the answer is pretty easy to solve. It's because of her design. Now, design matters in literally anything. It's what sets your characters apart from other characters. Character designs also tells a lot about the characters themselves. Take Devil May Cry for example. Dante's iconic red coat, guns, giant sword, and slimmed down hair design shows off his cocky, laid-back, often silly nature of his character. While in contrast, his twin brother Virgil's Victorian-inspired blue coat, standard Japanese katana, and even his pointed up hair shows off his cold, emotionless, and calculated nature. It symbolizes the different paths the two brothers took in their lives. It's why they could never get along and why they will always fight. The Sonic series is no stranger to that type of philosophy in their character designs. Every design screams character and their role in the stories of the series, even down to the tiniest of details. For example, Sonic's circle-shaped belly resembling the sun to show off his never-ending sunny side up attitude and being that bright star when things are at their worst. Character designs being important are why some fans are mad that Rouge's design has been toned down due to missing the point of her femme fatale attitude. Now you ask, what does Sage's design and the fact that her being a human-like AI have to do with anything? Well, look at all of Eggman's robots. Their designs all distinctly scream robots that were created by him. All devoid of emotion or purpose aside from serving Eggman. Just killing machines for the sake of a madman that doesn't care about them. No one exemplifies this better than Metal Sonic, especially when compared to the main character he's based on. Sonic is all organic while Metal is all mechanical. Sonic goes fast by running on his legs, while Metal needs his built-in turbine to go fast. Sonic has an endless amount of expressions while Metal has no expression at all. Always that singular, cold, murderous stare. Sonic protects all living things while Metal wants all living things to kneel before him. And more importantly, Sonic is free to live his life however he feels like it, while Metal is a slave to the ambitions of his creator, who doesn't treat him like a son, but more as a way to mock Sonic, and to show that his genius can match his speed. The dichotomy of the two can be told this thoroughly just through their designs alone. So back to Sage. The first thing going through your mind when looking at her, compared to the other Eggman robots, is, oh my god, look how cute she is! She is a far cry from anything Eggman has ever created, even though she is a machine just like the rest of them. From Eggman's perspective, he didn't just create another machine to serve under him. In his mind, he just created life. And for the man who is known to create stuff that are opposite of it, it's quite the achievement for him to pull. He even brags about it in one of his memos.
Who says I can't create life, huh? Just a bunch of proteins bumping together, anyone can do that. A true genius does it with code and electrons. And if I did create life, she would be brilliant and loyal and perfectly effective. And you know why? Because her dad is a genius, that's why.
Of course, he's gonna look at Sage differently from them all because he created her. His genius created life. His ego is one of the main sources of why he cares about her so much. But there's also the fact that life is in the form of a little girl, which, makes it even more of a tricky situation. Her being a little human-like girl ties back to the fact that Eggman himself is human as well. In my opinion, she represents everything Eggman represses about himself. She has empathy, emotion, and by the end of the game, she becomes more human than AI. One that can experience compassion, love, hope, and genuine fear that goes beyond her coding. She represents the humanity that Eggman tends to forget that he has besides those very rare moments. Sage is Eggman's humanity. And then there's the fact in one of his memos I showed earlier, where he describes how he felt about his cousin Maria. His jealousy of her not being the center of attention, as his family only talked about her and what happened to her. But he also thinks that Sage may have the same effect as Maria. Throughout his time with Sage, he's starting to understand why. It's at a point where she makes him care about things that aren't just about him. It comes ahead around the end of the game, where Eggman realizes that he might lose Sage. You can hear him choke up while trying to put on an act. And then we get to the ending, which is one of my favorites in the series, where Eggman is all alone after realizing that Sage is gone. You can tell how distraught he was over this. He's never like this with any of his robots that get destroyed. But from that distraught comes his resolve, when he managed to bring her back in the after credits. Frontier tells a beautiful story about performing miracles through the love of another. Whether it's Sonic defeating the Titans for the sake of his love for his friends saving him for the sake of their love for him, and Sage sacrificing herself for the sake of her love for Eggman. It comes full circle with Eggman bringing her back for the sake of his love for her. It's such a beautiful story, man. With all that being said, why the rejection of not only her, but their whole dynamic? I did say that this character has caused some discourse surrounding Eggman's character. A character you wouldn't think would have this discourse like you see with Sonic, Shadow, and her. Well, one of them is that their dynamic is rather rushed. They technically don't have that many scenes to warrant this type of change the two go about in the story. It makes a certain scene completely cringe and awkward. I get it, but I generally don't mind it. Sure, there could have been more scenes with them to further flesh them out, but I do think the scenes with them in the game are enough to get the point across. Then there's a matter of further details being hidden away in these Egg memos. These are basically Eggman's recorded thoughts throughout his time in cyberspace. People don't like that these weren't just cutscenes, or the way they get them is to fish with the greatest character in fiction, Big the Cat. I think those asking for them to be just cutscenes don't understand these are Eggman's personal thoughts, something that other characters are not supposed to hear. It shows his rather introverted-like nature and reserved emotions compared to the man-child we know fully well. I don't think these should be discarded or not be a factor when analyzing the character of him because of the way you obtained them. Then, there's the issue of people thinking the point of Sage's character is supposed to be to them. They believe Sage is going to make Eggman soft, that her character is going to be some redemption-like arc for Eggman, diminishing the point of him being the villain. It's also the fact that Eggman does call Sage his daughter, something he's never referred to any of his creations before and probably never will. Even complimenting her seems a bit much for them to handle, even though he can do that for robots that for once do a good job. They believe someone as horrible as Eggman, who has done these multiple upon multiple atrocities in the series that makes him as dangerous as the actual monsters he releases, can't act like this. So this side of him being so outwardly shown scares people of how his character is going to be handled in the future. However, this is all assumption for the most part. Like, saying Shadow moving on from his past means he should hate Maria or forget about her entirely, or Amy's love for Sonic has been removed and has become completely platonic levels of assumption. Nothing is really set in stone, and I feel there's a bit of misconception from people who either didn't understand the point this dynamic was getting across, or refused to for the sake of being very stubborn. I just find it rather ironic that those same people who spam the same tiring Kishimoto quote about Americans not being able to read the space between the lines are having trouble reading the space between the lines when it comes to Eggman and Sage's relationship. Sage is not going to redeem or make Eggman soft. She knows who he is and doesn't care. He's her creator. He gave her life. He gave her a purpose. She's the only one that's very loyal to him without him actually have to build that into her like he has to do with his other machines. Ian Flynn even has to clarify on the fact that yeah, she's not going to make him soft, but make him a lot worse since Dr. Eggman now has someone to fight for.
Now, I can't speak to the general direction of the entire franchise, but my thinking is this is only going to make him worse. You've seen what kind of devastation he's wrought just to fulfill his own needs. What happens when Daddy's little girl wants something?
Oh no. Oh no.
What if Sage just decides she doesn't like the shape of that continent one day? It is illogical.
Oh no.
With enough ordnance, he could bomb everything into the proper shape, now couldn't he?
Oh no. Ian, what have you done? What have you done? What have you brought on us?
He throws out waves upon waves of robots that he's annoyed that get destroyed. But if Sonic were to perhaps, possibly, slightly scramble the signal for his little precious angel, what do you think he's gonna do?
Oh no. Oh no.
People like to think he was all egged at to Sage for the whole game, but that's not entirely true. He does get on her case from time to time. Whether it's berating her over the fact she still hasn't found a safe way to get him out of cyberspace, or snaps at her over the fact that she told him that he and Sonic should work together this time. There's still that man-child behavior on display to see. Eggman can see Sage as his beautiful daughter, and the extension of his ego. She's so perfect because he made her that way. His genius finally created something that's actually useful. You can have it both ways, but for some reason one of them is just taboo. It's so taboo for people that they try to fix this relationship, which in turn ruins the point of Sage. Oh, Eggman should treat her terribly. So like Orba and Cubot. She should work hard to try to get his approval, but ultimately never get it. So like Metal or Starline. She should see how horrible he treats people and turn against them. So like Omega, Gamma, or Emerald. You get my point here, right? Any change to make this relationship better to some people has already been done to death. You're just rehashing old ground, and these are the same people who hate that fact about modern Sonic stories nowadays, that is supposedly just rehashing old stuff. I even made a video about that topic. So like now it's okay to do that because you're afraid of Eggman being a decent parent? Any change to their dynamic is removing the very thing that makes Sage special and turning her into just another Eggman robot. Some people also point to the Japanese side of Frontiers and see that Eggman treats Sage with not as much love as he does in the English version. However, that relationship still isn't as hostile as people make it out to be. He doesn't necessarily treat her terribly, he's just more indifferent to her. I don't think him pointing out the fact that she may look human, but she lacks a soul is him being mean to her, but just pointing out the obvious. He doesn't call her trash or useless or insult her at every turn. The egg memos in Japanese remains almost the same, showing that Sage is having an effect on him that he has trouble figuring out. They've removed him calling her his daughter, but there's still that parental care he has for her. It's just more subtle towards that fact. Dr. Eggman's character at this point in the series is in a well-consistent state, and why wouldn't he be? Like I said, he's the most consistent character in the series, and that's what makes it fascinating to learn about him. Whenever you peel back the layers of his character, it feels natural that the next evolution for him is to give him a kid. That kid in question is also such a fascinating character to talk about that I don't see anyone give her the proper credit for being such a great character. All the potential being squandered because some people don't give her the chance to give her a proper analysis on what makes her a great character. Someone should fix that. But that's a story for another time.